Emily, you probably know yourself.
Oh, no, that's okay. No, I took pictures of it on my phone.
Thanks for
And
joining.
Join you over here.
I wished you would. We're going to call the meeting to order at 5 o'clock. I want to thank everyone for coming out, braving the cold weather, and appreciate everyone's attendance. Yeah, today was a little bit warmer. Committee members B.B. Casey and Woody Kennedy are not available to attend the meeting, but if the recorder will note that they have an excused absence, I'd appreciate it. Kim Hallquist is not able to join us, so I'm responsible for recording this session. Ed has graciously agreed to take the minutes this evening. Just a reminder, please speak clearly with a high modulation into the microphone and be sure your microphone is turned on when you're speaking. If you're not a committee member, the chair will recognize you. The first order of business is the approval of the minutes from our December 12th meeting, which I've emailed the committee in advance. I request an approval of the minutes by a committee vote. All those in favor say aye and raise your hand. Aye. Opposed, abstain. So it's unanimous. The minutes are unanimously approved. The second order of business is a discussion I've had with B.B. Casey and a couple other members about meeting every other month as opposed to monthly. This will give us an opportunity to do more work between meetings and also be mindful of the committee's other responsibilities in the community. That proposal is up for discussion in terms of meeting every other month versus monthly.
And through the summer? Excuse me. And for
Yes,
the summer
it
as
would be
well?
through the summer, yeah.
Sounds fine to me.
Any other discussion in that regard to that matter?
I'm wondering, is it worthwhile for us to maybe meet, even in my teacher voice, is it worth it for us to meet during the months where we might be talking about bike trails or things like that, whether we should meet once a month then, and then maybe curtail our meetings through the winter when there's really not much we could be doing? Yeah. I don't know. That's just
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that our regularly scheduled meetings would be every other month. There may be opportunities that we want to take advantage of, i.e. we're preparing for a presentation to the planning board, to the Board of Selectmen, preparing for a grant, working on a very special project where we might meet more frequently, or a smaller group of us might meet more frequently.
Yeah, I support that, Russ. I think there's a lot of work being done outside of the meeting, so I think it would give us more time and opportunity to focus on those smaller group meetings than meeting every month.
Okay.
And just a reminder, in terms of the New Hampshire law regarding transparency, that if a quorum of our committee, which would be 4 or more people, meet, then there has to be public notice about it, and that meeting has to be recorded. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve our meeting, that we amend our meeting frequency to every other month, and that would result in our next meeting being April 17th at 5 p.m. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose or abstain? The motion is carried. So just in terms of some updates from the chair, we had a meeting in December with Alex Belenz, from South E, some SE group, excuse me, and he shared some examples of using streetscape planning to enhance multimodal transportation where a street or a road is shared by cyclists, by pedestrians, and motorists. One of the things that he highlighted was the idea of putting up temporary installations that are called Bollards to slow traffic and the Ballards actually narrowed the street width. So this is an idea that I have had some discussion about with Adam and also with Sam, who are, in the town staffing. And yesterday I spoke to Craig Tufts, a senior planner from Central New Hampshire Regional Planning Commission. They actually installed temporary ballards in Concord, and they did a whole project of using volunteer staff and donations from small businesses, and they created mechanisms for feedback using a QR code that was right next to the installation, but also they had a questionnaire on the website in terms of getting feedback from people on the effectiveness or suitability of a temporary ballard in terms of a traffic slowing mechanism. If you weren't at the December meeting, I have shared that presentation with you by Alex Belenz. One concern that was raised in the Concord demonstration was eliminating parking spaces to install the ballards. And I know that might be a sensitive issue in town because parking is at a premium. So I'm going to follow up with Craig and get additional information from him on exactly how that project unfolded. As I know you know, in talking to Adam, he underscored the fact that New Hampshire DOT needs to be consulted about any kind of project of this nature, given that Main Street is a state road, Route 114. So I just wanted we'll have an opportunity to talk a little bit more about this, but I would like us to consider working on this project for the summer of 2025. On a separate matter, I talked to Adam this week about the sidewalks, which I know is of interest to everyone here. And Adam and Sam have been in contact with the construction engineer for New Hampshire DOT to talk about improvements to the sidewalk, but also, there was discussion about, painting the sidewalks, making them more visible. They haven't been able to get the construction engineer to return their calls to this juncture, but they are in communication with the DOT construction engineer. And the construction engineers are assigned by district. I don't know what district we're in, but I've been doing a lot of thinking about sort of which way forward for our committee. I'm sure some of you have been doing that also. I think that at this juncture, we're not positioned really to launch a major study like the pedestrian and bicycle master plan study or the Main Street study, given that the town is really focused on the police station proposal and the affordable housing initiative. But I think there are some things that we can do as a committee, and we can spend some time talking about them tonight. But one of them is sort of laying the groundwork for those studies, which would be doing some community surveys and forums about what residents think about what the priority should be in terms of improving walking and biking, safety and access in town. That data would help us in terms of planning studies and also grant funding. Another activity that our committee could be engaged in is doing traffic stress surveys and bicycle and pedestrian counts on the higher volume streets in town. Again, that kind of data is extremely useful that we can incorporate into the planning mechanism, and that's an activity we could do in the summer, just using volunteers. And the Regional Planning Commission can provide us resources in terms of like what survey tools to use, what methodology to use, how to capture the information and to tabulate it. And then the third thing, which I've already talked about, is working on some traffic slowing installations using street ballards, and incorporating that feedback mechanisms, which can be a survey on the town website, as well as using a QR code right at the station, right at the site, for people to answer a quick survey. So anyway, those are things that I've been thinking about in terms of work we could be doing, and I want to open it up to some discussion. I'm not sure it's necessary at this juncture to review the streetscape planning presentation that Alex presented in December. I have that on the agenda. Everyone on the committee has received that, and many of you participated in that presentation, which I thought was a very good kind of overview about how streets and roads can be sort of a shared space for motorists, for cyclists, and for pedestrians. Why don't we open it up for discussion pertaining to some of the items I've mentioned in terms of like what committee members see as like the best way forward. And obviously, I have on the agenda the multi-purpose trail grant. So we are going to talk about that. So I'm not excluding that, but I'd like to just open up for some discussion on any of the items I just touched on, which may be worthwhile projects, what you see as work moving forward in the coming months for the committee, and how any of the things that I possibly mentioned could be incorporated into our work.
Russ, you mentioned that there is the opportunity for feedback on the ballards that are in Concord. Have they shared any of that feedback yet? Do they know if they're working, what people feel, how people feel about them? Is it something that we could easily implement here? What's the cost? It sounds like a lot of them are donated by small businesses, which could be something that even occurs here before the summertime.
I don't have that specific information at this time. Craig was going to send me some reports regarding the project, which I haven't received yet. But I know that they engage the community in a number of ways, including having small businesses kind of like make donations. We have the garden club, obviously. Some of the temporary installations have included like a planter, large planters. And obviously you could have vegetation in the planters and cement ballards around it so that, a vehicle doesn't smash into the planters. They also, I think, had information tables, snacks for people and things like that to try to engage people in a conversation about it. I'll get more information on that. Concord is not the only New England community that has installed these, as Alex mentioned. Bethlehem has also done a similar kind of project. But I will share that with the committee as I receive it. And as far as the costs go, I don't have any specific estimates, but we're talking about, $8,000 to $15,000 kind of in terms of hard cost, I believe.
That's just temporary, the ballards. We're talking about temporary installation for that much money?
Right, yes. In other words, the whole idea is to have several different kinds of installations over a period of months and get feedback from the community on their effectiveness in terms of traffic slowing. And I mean, obviously someone might say, we just lost 2 parking spaces. But in order to make any permanent infrastructure changes, that's a much more lengthy process, involves a certain higher level of commitment from the state and from the town in terms of resources. This is more an opportunity for information collection and an opportunity to engage the community.
And can I just ask another question? Are we focusing strictly on the Main Street business section area?
I don't know if we would do that exclusively, but I think initially, in terms of the hazards Main Street presents to shared space of transportation. I think that would be the first focal point, yeah.
You think it would be too much to go all the way out to Hannaford's?
Well, I would define Main Street as, you know, Route 111 all the way to, you know, the Park and Go. I mean, in terms of transportation. But I think for the purposes of this project, we would probably concentrate on an area that has a high level of pedestrian, motorist, and bicycle traffic. So it would be in the downtown area.
So Russ, from the presentation, I was really encouraged to see how involved the New Hampshire Department of Transportation is in all of this and the work that they've done setting up guidelines. And it seems when we're looking at the major corridors, be it 114, Route 11, in terms of processing, first defining the scope of the project where we're going to be concentrating, and then working with the New Hampshire DOT to see what really is feasible with these narrow corridors that they're essentially controlling what we can and can't do. So I think within the larger group, defining the routes, as the Department of Transportation has done throughout the state, but focusing locally in a tight rural area where our priorities would be, and then sitting down with the Department of Transportation and figuring out what is reasonable before we plan everything out and find, no, you're not going to do that, no, you're not going to do that.
Right, I think you're raising the question of, is it realistic to do this summer? And I don't really have a definitive answer on that. But I do think it's important for us to realize as an advisory committee, when we're interfacing with a state agency, that we need, like, you know, Adam Ricker and Sam Clark around the table, because they will be actually sort of further defining the project, and it has to meet certain engineering specifications, it has to meet certain safety specifications. There's issues around, you know, just routine maintenance, i.e., you know, the sweeper comes through, how does it manage, you know, that kind of an installation. So I think that our role would be kind of the catalyst for this process, but probably not the driver of the process, in the sense that, you know, sort of the final shape and form of it would definitely have to be signed off on by our town officials and by New Hampshire DOT. Yeah. I mean, you could make the argument that if it was a town road, it would be more straightforward for us to do this. But personally, I just think that we should make an attempt to do it on Main Street, because I think that that's more visible, and I think it would result in more engagement and sort of community conversation as opposed to another street. So, but that is a consideration. The regulatory process with New Hampshire DOT can be lengthy, but I know that other towns have done this successfully, so.
Well, certainly our walkabout with Sam was most enlightening, I thought, because he really does understand not only the town, but the state regulations. So, yeah, I think sitting down with him would be critical to trying to figure out what's doable, what isn't, within a defined route, be it Main Street or elsewhere.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I was just thinking about is the perennial water main issue, right? In other words, they're not going to disrupt the sidewalks on Main Street this summer. Would a temporary installation of this type would it in any way compromise the agreement they have with the contractor in terms of potential damage to the water line. So I will follow up with that on that question, which I hadn't thought of until this meeting, which is obviously we don't want to go down that road of the water main issue.
I think for the purpose of the water main, if everything goes well, the 12 months or whatever since they finished, which I think will begin in the summer in some sections.
And November 1st, I think, is that's when it's all, they finish the whole
Finish.
program, the whole,
Just thinking that
process.
the summer would probably not be a good time to do anything that is on the road if in fact early paving was done, which I don't know if that's possible. You know,
Yeah, I think that, I mean, obviously I'll consult with Adam and Sam about this. And if they give me the guidance that, you know, those sections of Main Street we can't do, then we can, there could be an installation that's still on the Main Street corridor that is not where the water main project has been installed. So, Hannaford, I'm just making this up, but, Hannaford Shopping Center, or another location. Obviously, that is something we have to consider.
My thought, Russ, was maybe, if a secondary road is easier to attain, as far as doing some testing on one of these things, possibly in front of the parking area at Pleasant Lake Beach, there's people that walk, like the walkway there is all segmented, and there's always people walking around the beach and parking a long ways away, past the dam and everything, that are walking to the beach. Maybe we can just do like a little test there before we invest $50,000 in a temporary structure. Maybe there's something cheaper that we could do on our own that would work in that situation, being a town road there. So
I do agree, driving by there every day, that that's a pinch point in terms of motorists and beachgoers and cyclists, and that's certainly an area to look at. So I appreciate that suggestion. Any other comments, folks we haven't heard from? Okay, so in terms of next steps, I will share information from other municipalities on exactly what they've done in terms of these temporary installations. I will consult with Adam and Sam regarding what placements for these temporary ballards would be suitable and acceptable to the town, and I'll get back to you. I think what I would like to do, since we're not meeting until April, is to be in communication with the committee to identify maybe a couple of people to kind of work on this project, who have the time and the interest, if in fact we can bring this to fruition this summer. So that was part of, I'm not making formal subcommittees, but that was one of the things I've been thinking about, is just having some working groups around different projects, and I'll be in touch with individuals about that. I don't have, in terms of the sidewalk repair and reconstruction, I don't have a significant update for you because I've been away. My understanding, and someone in attendance tonight might be able to clarify it for me, but my understanding is that $100,000 was allocated from the capital reserve budget, I believe, for sidewalk repair. And although I haven't talked to Sam about this recently, my understanding is that as a pilot or as a sort of test project, that he was considering doing a major upgrade of the sidewalk that's near Colby Sawyer College. That, for those of you who had the pleasure of joining the sidewalk tour, that was pointed out by Sam. Yeah. I don't know, Bob or anyone else here has further information about sort of the sidewalk plan for 2025? Just introduce yourself, please.
My name is Bob Bowers. I'm a resident of New London. I did speak with Sam briefly, and his plans seem to be consistent with what he's described before. I had spoken with him, and I think maybe you remember this, about concrete as a possibility. He has spoken with those who do these things and has concluded that economically, if you put in asphalt sidewalks, but then make sure you maintain them and take care of them on an annual basis, that they will last just as well as concrete. I have, other than my Google search, I have nothing to say that's not correct. He assured me that if they did that, they have a facilities planning process where that would be put into the system to make sure that they did do that. He has told me that the intention at this point is this year to start up by the Cleveland Homestead and come down. If he is able to do so, he would like to bring that all the way down to Seamans Road, coming down through the college. His hope is that he can make it 5 feet wide. I would urge this committee that if there's a conversation at any point, that you emphasize that that is probably a very good thing to do. You can get away with 3 feet. He indicated that his research and talking with other communities, because I had said to him that various cities have concrete sidewalks downtown, and that indicated to me that that was a more durable surface. His conclusion in his consulting was that a lot of that is due to an emphasis on aesthetics, that the downtown areas of a lot of towns want concrete because it looks better, it feels better, people like it better, rather than. And I'm not going to argue with that. I'll probably poke around a bit and talk with Sam some more. But that leads me to the conclusion that if he can do what he's proposing, get all the way down to Seamans Road with asphalt this year, or even if he can't, next year, that the next step looks to me to be either you start at the other end or you start looking at downtown. And I think it would be very helpful if this committee started thinking about the aesthetics. There may be more cost, but I personally think downtown sidewalks would be better concrete. I like brick. He's pointed out to me problems with brick of a substantial nature, and I understand that that's probably not something that could be done here, both cost-wise and the bumpity-bump that disabled people may engage in. So if you were to seriously look at whether it made some sense to emphasize concrete sidewalks in the downtown area, maybe you won't agree, but to look at it, it strikes me that that may cost more, and you then need to maybe think about cost. My understanding is similar to yours, that he's got 100 to use. They put in 50 again this year. There's still some money in there, but it would be very important, I think, to extrapolate that. What does that mean? What does it cost to put in concrete? So that's my update as I understand it from Sam, and that's my hope and suggestion to you on how you might proceed and think this thing through. Not a rush, but as you all know, budget committee meetings suddenly are there, and very often you feel like you're behind the 8 ball. So I would hope that you can start thinking about that.
Thank you. In terms of subsequent years, and I did share with the committee the latest rendition I had of the capital reserve budget, but in terms of subsequent years, I think there is an additional allocation in subsequent years. I guess the presumption is that they would complete this downtown sidewalk project in a period of like 4 years, I believe. They've sort of planned out, those allocations. Is that your understanding?
I'll say yes, hesitantly. That was the plan several years ago, and then they quit doing it. So one thing I hope this committee will do is pay attention to that process and see if in fact that's being done, and if it is not, to urge the selectmen, I understand you're just an advisory committee, but to urge them to continue that. I think you have a board that is interested in that and will follow through. But I also think it's important that there be a watchdog that looks at what is in fact going into those. It's important to work with Sam on his estimate of costs as you do this. As prices go up, and maybe if you decide to do concrete, costs go up. Measuring out how much needs to be there to do X amount, and then Y amount, and then Z amount. You get to the other end of town, I think you've got some economic issues in doing the sidewalks that may be more troublesome. The sidewalks are worse. The width is not so clear that it could be 5 feet. You may have bigger issues. But I think it's a matter of working it out with Sam, extrapolating it out, continuing to monitor what the selectmen are doing, seeing if all this pressure that is recently around about looking at budgets, does that affect taking money out of the capital budget fund for sidewalks? And I'll be here knocking on your door if they do. I think it's important. I think New London's a beautiful town, and I think sidewalks are an important part of what people want and expect, and what you experience when you go to towns you like. So I think you're doing a good job. I'm nowhere near the broad outlook that you guys are looking at, and I think that's wonderful. I'm focused on sidewalks, as you can obviously tell. So that's my gig.
I think I'd echo, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I think I'd echo Bob, because just driving down Main Street at nighttime in the middle of the summer, the sidewalks in and around the Barn Playhouse seem to have the most activity. They're in the worst shape. They have the worst lighting, and the people that are navigating those sidewalks are probably some of our more vulnerable.
I probably mentioned this in one of my memos. I have a very dear friend that is elderly, coming back at night from the barn, bang, fell down. If it were me, I would start on that end, because I think it's the most dangerous and needs the most work. But the other part of me says the downtown aesthetics is a very important thing in terms of how the town appears. So,
Which I might echo you on the concrete
Yeah.
material too.
So whichever way you go, my big involvement in this is hoping that things get done, and you're going that way. Sam's going. I am so enthralled with having Sam in that department. I mean, it's not just sidewalks. He's thinking about things. He is really an intelligent, active manager. It's amazing. I don't want to say that about young people too often, but, it happens.
So Bob, back to the aesthetics, and since you've trod the sidewalks for hundreds of hours more than I, the portion that was put in along from basically County Road back toward Powers Point 10 or 15 years ago was stamped to look like brick. And so I suspect that that's actually asphalt.
Yes.
That was stamped and painted.
Yes.
But I think it's held up pretty well, hasn't it? Bob?
It is held up well. If you look at it, there does not appear to be any major problems with it. There are a few areas where you may have a water line or a drainage situation, or driveways where it begins to have its issues. But I think you're absolutely right. And frankly, aesthetically, I mean, it looked like a nice, beautiful brick walk when you started. Now it looks different, and I don't care, frankly. It looks pretty nice, even when it's faded away. But I talked with Sam a little bit about stamped walks, and there are all kinds of ways you can do those, that all kinds of design. they have some of the similar problems that he's talking about brick walks, which is when you stamp them, they start to have potentially negative effects on people who are trying to use walkers and go down the streets. So his position seems to be, and I don't want to speak for him, that the smoother your walk and the fewer the number of individual including concrete where you have slab. I mean, you can have concrete walks that don't do that. You can pour them as straight lines, but he's very concerned, and rightly so, about the effect on walking difficulties for various people. So, yeah, I mean, they got some beautiful designs on sidewalks. I've seen them all over the place. They're really, really nice, but I understand that. They cost more. So if you get down to cost and efficiency and durability and aesthetics, running an asphalt from Cleveland's to here with the amount of traffic on that, I think is fine. You don't have businesses on the other side of the road. I do think that you might want to seriously consider concrete through the middle of town, all the way down, frankly, to Spring Ledge. And whether you start where you don't have a lot. One of the values of starting from this end is you can start experimenting with it, because there's a lot of areas that don't need a lot. I mean, there are some good sections of the sidewalk. You start at the other end, you're going to have some massive issues right from the get-go, I think, to deal with. But Sam is also slightly worried about the 5-foot width, and I don't think that's a problem. I went and measured out property line setbacks of individual owners. There's only 4, really, and then you get to the college, and then you get to the Baptist church, and frankly, I think they're set back far enough, and if they weren't, they're both the type of groups that would work with the town very well, I'm sure. I just can't imagine. So that's my pitch. I think Sam's doing a good job. I think you're doing a good job.
Okay,
I won't see you in April. Sorry.
thanks, Bob.
But you get some stuff done.
Appreciate the update. Okay. Any other further comment or discussion on the sidewalks? Okay, thanks again, Bob, appreciate it. Okay, let's move on to the next agenda item, and the bike walk master plan study. And I guess we don't need to spend a lot of time on that, because what I stated in my opening remarks was we need to do a few things to kind of lay the groundwork for the master plan. That at this juncture, the town's not going to commit to a planning study, and the funding for that would have to be budgeted, or we obviously have to find outside funding. I am going to continue discussions with the Regional Planning Commission around this and try to figure out a way forward. I guess I would leave it at that. So I think we'll move on and have Grant talk about an excellent community meeting that he facilitated, and the discussion about a multi-purpose trail, and the ways the committee can support his efforts. Thank you.
So on February 11th, we had a gathering at the Tracy Library, and I invited some strategic members of the community that have different kind of stakeholder positions, I guess you will, in a multi-trails kind of network, and the feedback was tremendous. I started the meeting out, everybody kind of introduced themselves and said what their interests were, and then the meeting progressed to, I placed some large notepad papers on different desks in the library, or in the meeting room, and people were able to answer some questions or put down their thoughts about some questions I posed. And they're kind of, it was more of a brainstorming situation more than a kind of having answers to these questions. They're just trying to give us some focus on where we're going to proceed from here. And a couple of questions were, what are the goals or the outcomes of this project? What obstacles will we face? Who are the stakeholders? What organizations should have access to the trails or direct connection to the network? And what types of terrain do we want, to have throughout the network? And, where our next steps go from here. So those are kind of the broader questions that I posed, and I got a lot of really good feedback from the people at the meeting. So from there, I kind of was able to break it down. It seems to be that there's really going to be kind of two groups that are working on this. One is a bit of a administrative type group that will be forming a nonprofit type organizational, bank account, I guess, if you will, that would enable, funds to be deposited to our account so that we can start progress on some of this. The other would be kind of a concepts and trail design type group, and that would be kind of more in the, layout of the trails, walking the proposed areas to determine where the trail routes would best go. And then ultimately, probably part of the construction of the trails too would be kind of fall under that group a bit too. So we've got a ton of progress. There's a lot of support from Colby Sawyer, which I'm enthusiastic about. That was kind of one of the anchor organizations that I was really trying to get on board, and they've been far more respondent to it than I anticipated they would be. My wife Crystal went to the athletic director meeting today, where all the coaches get together, and she kind of had a quick proposal about the trail network, and many of the coaches are willing to commit their team's community service time to the development and building of these trails. I've got friends of mine in town that have already donated, are willing to donate bridges if we need bridges in any location. So that's exciting. Pizza Chef was donating our dinner for the meeting, which was awesome. Anybody I talked to about this project, they're just so enthusiastic and willing to help that, we're definitely going to have challenges. But I think that those can be easily overcome with the amount of momentum and effort that I've seen. So I'm really excited about it. We have a lot of trails already in town but they're so segmented. Very, very few of them actually connect to each other. That if we had a way of connecting a lot of the existing trails, people could travel around town much more safely. We could utilize a lot more of these networks that are already existing. And it would just be an excellent way for pedestrian and bike traffic to travel and around town safely. So we're making a lot of headway. There's definitely a lot more meetings to come. I've got a lot of enthusiastic support, and I got a lot of volunteers that are willing to contribute to either one of those kind of groups that I've divided our project into. So I think if the advisory committee, could continue to just, a lot of our members have given some really good feedback about, ways that we can implement this network, challenges that we might have. And I don't have a lot of experience with the kind of nonprofit, I guess, aspect of this type of project. So I know that there are people that do. So if I could, lean on them a little bit to have that kind of advice would be great. So. Yeah, thanks, Emily. Yeah, thank you.
It was exciting to see how fired up people were about the whole process.
The turnout was fantastic. There were people that showed up that I didn't even have their contacts for, and they were happy to give their emails. The meeting was supposed to start at 5:30. People started showing up at 5:15, and it went until 8 when the library closed. So it was awesome. So
Great job.
yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So maybe you could talk a little bit about, the benefits to the community grant in terms of, you and I have had some discussions about, New London has a different kind of character to some of the other towns, but towns like Ascutney, Vermont, towns like Claremont, New Hampshire have really benefited from, a robust multi-purpose trail kind of network. And it goes beyond just sort of the construction of one trail, but it actually attracts people to the community.
Yeah, so during the process when we were talking about, what type of terrain that we'd like to have, what type of obstacles that we'd like to have, a lot of these towns have put in what's called a pump track, which is, the whole footprint of the pump track is relatively small. Maybe about half the size of a soccer field or something would be even a large one. And all they are is a series of rollers and kind of berms, which are not overly challenging, but give people kind of a congregating place. Kids can congregate there, and they can ride the pump track. It's really a good tool for people that are just learning bike control. A lot of the mountain bike classes and demonstrations that are out there, they kind of start with a pump track. So people that are just getting into mountain biking, that want to learn about bike control, they often will go to a pump track. And the neat thing about it is when you pump your bike, I guess, the idea is that you really don't even have to pedal around the track. It's kind of the track rollers kind of provide you with the momentum that you need to continue around the track without even having to pedal. It's really a neat thing, and a lot of people thought that maybe the outing club would be a good location for that. Underneath the power lines, it's kind of a no man's land between the two soccer fields, and with the size of the track, that would be a great space to build something like that, because it would be a real hub for the outing club for kids that maybe have a brother or sister that are at a baseball, soccer game or baseball game that they're not super interested in watching. The pump track would give them a place to hang out. It would also be a good location to Linebrook. I know Linebrook has come up many times as being one of the major trail arteries. So having a pump track that was right off the major trail artery would be a huge advantage. And then it could be the pump tracks often hold, kind of a center for events, or like a kind of a headquarters for where a bike event could start. So there's not plenty of parking always, but there's a lot of parking at the outing club. So that could be a spot where people kind of meet up and go to the pump track. So that was one thing. And then another huge advantage is that, this is a multi-generational trail network that we're trying to propose. And it's also a 4-season trail network that we're trying to propose. So while it's, mountain bikes are an aspect of it, it's not solely a mountain bike trail network. There will probably be a major artery trail that people can hike on, that they can Nordic ski on, that they can snowshoe on, that they can bike on. There's a lot of different human-propelled type things now that people are using. And if we had a trail that was kind of off the main street, away from the traffic, off the sidewalk certainly, but with access to downtown and the schools and the outing club, that's certainly the goal. That's what we are trying to achieve. And then, we can develop the trail network with the students in our schools, with Colby Sawyer College, with some of the other organizations in town. If we want to start building some more challenging mountain bike trails that are on the outskirts of town, that we access from this kind of major trail artery, I think that would be a continued step. This could be a never-ending kind of process, a constantly evolving process. and it would really unify so many different organizations in town, be it the school students or Colby Sawyer College or the businesses or, so many different aspects of organizations in town. Everybody could work together on a project like this, and it could meet the needs of so many different age groups and abilities that it would just unify the town and be a huge success, I think, so.
What do you see as next steps for your project?
Yeah, so that's constantly what I'm struggling with, right? I think developing kind of our vision for where the trail network would go would probably be kind of a next step. Who are the major stakeholders in our initial trail loop? And how do we determine, what the funding will be? I've talked to NEMBA because we are supported by NEMBA, which is the New England Mountain Bike Association. And again, their trails, they call themselves the Mountain Bike Association, but most of their trails, I'd say probably 90% of their trails are multi-use. When I'm on their trails, there are people dog sledding on their trails in the wintertime. There are people that are trail running on them when I'm mountain biking in the summer. It's very much a multi-use trail organization. So in talking with them, there isn't often, as long as we have approval from landowners where the trail will traverse, we don't have a lot of cost. There's not a tremendous amount of cost that's involved with it. A lot of the funding goes towards tools and equipment, hand tools and equipment for people that are looking to provide their time and support on a weekend day to build some trails. So,
But you're also talking about ongoing maintenance, right? You do have that.
yeah, ongoing maintenance. There is some ongoing maintenance. There's some cost with materials if there's a section of trail that is gets washed out a lot. Sometimes a culvert needs to be installed or some gravel needs to be installed to help mitigate some water control. But there really isn't a tremendous amount of cost associated. I've spoken with people in town that are willing to donate their equipment, their backhoes or their excavators or their front loaders for this type of project if we needed it. And then again, the Colby Sawyer is very receptive to it, and they're constantly looking for ways for community service that they can partake in community service. So a lot of that labor could come from there, and then the schools in town. I know the guidance counselor at the elementary school was looking to have like kind of a bike club that they'd like to put together. So we would. We've had part of the meeting. People were suggesting maybe kids come up with a name of our trails network. Put a little thing out in the elementary school where the kids can name the trail network and draw artwork for shirts or T-shirts that we're gonna sell to promote the network. So there's just opportunities everywhere.
Emily, you had a question?
Oh, I just had a question. Did we have New London Hospital on that group?
I don't see that, but I think we probably should include them.
Well, and you see-
Oh, actually, yeah, we do. We
Okay,
do.
all right,
Yes.
'cause
Yes.
I went home
Yes.
and I thought, God, I forgot about
Yeah.
that. So
Somebody listed
that's
that.
in
Yeah.
the whole area,
Yeah.
and there's so many of their, employees that are out walking during the day, and it would be great for them to hop on a bike and have a good time.
Yeah, and the outing club, Colby Sawyer Outing Club, is their number one interest when they get their feedback is mountain biking. That's their number one interest, and they think that it would bring people that are already biking around campus, that have mountain bikes on campus, that don't really see a lot of value in the outing club now. That might entice them to join and be more active in the outing club too. So they're excited about that opportunity as well. So, and they hope that maybe there'll be a time where there's a mountain bike rental shop in town or something that because they don't have easy access for bike storage all the time, but if there's a way that they could rent bikes or have bikes dropped off that they can ride, they're hoping that might be an option too.
Yeah, in terms of funding, I have a couple ideas that I'll share with you outside the meeting. So, any other questions or concerns? I just want to recognize Grant for the outstanding committee outreach he's done, and, you know, really engaged people to think about a robust recreational network in our town. And that's certainly part of the mission of our committee. So again, thanks for all the work that you do, and we certainly want to be in close communication with you and be supportive of your efforts, so appreciate it, yeah. Okay, I think the public comments section we've already covered with Bob, so we don't have to spend a lot more time on that. I wanted to ask committee members, just moving forward, to just have a little bit discussion, which we've revisited before in terms of, since we are meeting every other month, if it would be an effective structure for our committee to have working groups that focus on different aspects of the things that we touched on tonight. And we don't need to make a decision tonight. I certainly want to get B.B. Casey's input into this, and Woody's, they're not here, but you know, what I'm finding is we have great conversations at our meetings. I think it's very high-level conversations, and that's very helpful. But Ed had raised the question early on, are we a working committee or are we strictly kind of an advisory committee? If we're a working committee, that means that we really develop concrete, practical proposals that are actionable, in which we get commitments from the town or from the Board of Selectmen or town officials. That's sort of another layer of work beyond just a discussion group. I'm just raising sort of an overarching question here. And if having working groups would facilitate our work, what would be their, quote, subject area of the working groups, and, you know, what is people's commitment to putting more time and attention into the bike walk initiatives. You know, I mean, people have different people are at different life stages in our group here, you know, in terms of being, you know, young professionals, being, you know, middle-aged professionals, people being retired. So that may not be one question, but I've been thinking about what, just moving forward, the structural form our group should take. I mean, if we had 12 or 14 people, then it would be much more amenable to having working groups, i.e., you know, you would have 3 or 4 people in each group. But I'm raising the question. We don't really have to have an answer tonight, but I think that there are some areas that I touched on previously that, you know, it would be very helpful to me to have sort of ongoing conversations with a couple of committee members between meetings, and get some support and assistance in terms of problem solving. Or, you know, if we have to reach out to 6 people before the next meeting to generate some feedback, it would be helpful if I didn't have to make all those calls, if you understand what I'm saying. But the main impetus for this discussion is not how to make it easier for the chair, even though it might sound that way. It really is like how we can have a more engaged, focused, effective committee. You know, there's the example of, you know, the food waste group, which came up with a pilot, and, you know, for a relatively, I guess, for $12,000 a year, there's a certain segment of our population that recycle their kitchen waste. At this juncture, it doesn't appear that the Board of Selectmen want to expand that effort, but I think the model there is a pilot out there that's visible to the community, and they can get feedback from people, and hopefully that model will be replicated or expanded or whatever. And I'm not sure what the parallel is for us in terms of like a pilot project that is visible to the community, that sort of demonstrates a forward-thinking approach to active transportation. I don't know what that is, but my personal preference is that we not just be a discussion group, and I think obviously Grant has already launched, a project that is of keen interest to him and, a whole sector of our community. So, and I'm not suggesting that every one of you has to do a project on the scope or scale of what Grant's doing, but I do think we have to think about having focused work that is discernible to the community as like a pilot or a model or something like that, for people to say, okay, the Bike Walk Advisory Committee is not just having discussions, is not just discussing planning studies, but it's having some impact on our community in terms of the quality of our life.
Can we agree that maybe a Ballard in front of the parking area at the Pleasant Lake Beach would be something that maybe we can, a value of importance that we can strive for, just as a kind of a model, as kind of a...
Yeah, you're saying that, I think what you're saying, because I don't want to speak for you, is that if we can get some level of buy-in from the town to focus on a specific locale and come up with
Well, yeah, and
some
outside...
concrete and specific improvements to a particular intersection, a particular segment.
Yeah, and outside the DOT, outside of Main Street, it seems to be that those gears work very slowly. So if we can agree as a committee that maybe adding a traffic control slowing function along the beach access at Pleasant Lake there is something that we can all agree on, maybe that's a place to start. Place to start.
I guess I have a question. Should we talk to the select people about what their intent of this committee is? I mean, do they want us to be an advisory group, or do they want us to come up with neat little projects that we can work on?
Yeah,
that they'll
I
support?
think we can go back to the select board, but I don't really want to go back to the select board and say, tell us what our purpose is. I'd rather go back to the select board and say, the initial discussions for this committee, and Bob was part of this, was, to focus on the sidewalk improvement, and then there was further discussion, which I was engaged in, of no, let's broaden the focus to improving biking and walking safety and access in town. So that's sort of our main thematic focus. I know that's a large mandate, but an example that one of the Board of Selectmen gave me was, there was an issue of excess solid waste at the recycling center, and a committee was formed around the solid waste, around the food waste issue, and they came up with a concrete and practical solution, i.e. on a very small scale, because they identified a contractor who would accept the waste. They came up with a budget, and they put it for the budget, put it before the select board, that said it's going to cost us $12,000 to $14,000 a year to have 300 families process their kitchen waste. And the select board found, I guess, some discretionary money, because that's not a huge amount of money, to do that. I'm not saying we have to follow that example, but I think they are looking for some concrete and specific projects for us to deliver on, however we define that, you know. In other words, you know, we did the share the road signs, you know, in town, we did the bike racks, and it's kind of like, well, what's the next iteration? That's a little bit of a difficult issue in the sense of the way these committees have functioned in other towns is that they go through that robust planning process of doing like a bicycle and pedestrian master plan with yearly benchmarks that demonstrate like, okay, year one, we're gonna focus on Pleasant Lake, you know, intersection, things like that. So one of the challenges has been, since we do not have that master plan for bicycle and pedestrian transportation, that it's been a little difficult to say, here's our top priority, if you understand what I'm trying to say, because we haven't sort of done that robust, deep planning process. So I think that still needs to be done, but I think that based on all the information I have, with the housing survey that's going on, with the police station debate, with the affordable housing project, that I don't think there's the bandwidth or the space this year for us to like boldly move forward with a big project or a big planning study. So that's why I touched on several of the things at the beginning of the meeting, which are smaller scale things where we can have some impact. I mean, I think that Grant is raising an excellent point, is even though Main Street is highly visible in terms of its challenges and for shared space of transportation, that doing it at Pleasant Lake is going to remove a lot of the complications with New Hampshire DOT in the sense that it's in the town's purview to do this. So I think that was an excellent point.
Well, I think too that we can be an advisory committee. Obviously, we are not going to spearhead the sidewalk project, just because there's so much involved with that. We don't have the tools or the capability to handle all that on our own.
Yeah.
So, you know, we can advise that type of work and project. You know, what type of materials we want to use. We can continue to talk to Sam and talk to these planning, you know, what do they call it, streetscape planning committees and stuff like that. We can do our research so that we can assist the selectmen in making a recommendation on those types of items. But certainly, I think that we could be successful in, you know, implementing a Ballard by Pleasant Lake. I think that's a project that is certainly something that we can accomplish on our own. So,
And if I could add to that, we talk about working groups. There could be a number of people who are working on educating the community as to what the purpose is, because in the summer with the traffic, to have an obstacle might be foreseen as an obstacle. The education of what we're doing and having people who will walk that area regularly and make concrete observations. You know, so there could be some very concrete, legitimate subcommittees or groups of people who tackle the enormity of it, but just keep it that one Ballard at that one site, which is part of New London, and keep constant communication. That could be a whole nother purpose of someone, to be constantly giving feedback to the community as to what we are trying to do and then how it's going.
and then we'll know too whether our efforts to make contact with the DOT to get approval for Main Street, whether that's even worth all of our efforts too. So.
Yeah, and it may be realistic to think about like summer 2026 for doing something on Main Street, you know, with New Hampshire DOTs, with the complications that are involved. And whatever we learn from the Pleasant Lake project, we can then apply to Main Street, which is, you know, maybe a little more complicated in terms of traffic flow and all the considerations on Main Street. So, I mean, that would make a lot of sense, I mean, in terms of a way forward. But I do think we need to be sort of more concrete and specific about what our goals and objectives are and what our work plan is going to be moving forward. So I think what I'll do in regard to this is draft something, which is, here's sort of an activity plan for our committee, you know, for 2025, 2026, just for people to give feedback to. And then based on what we agree to as the activity plan, then we can build the structure to support that, if that makes sense, as opposed to like, let's come up with a structure, but it may not fit, the activity plan, if that makes sense. So I will do some more research and have more discussion with people, and then come up with something that we can review at our next meeting in terms of like, what should be our priorities and our focus in 2025, 2026. Let's just make that sort of the window of what we'll do. And certainly, we want to incorporate the multi-purpose trail activity into that, as one extension of the committee's work.
And one aspect, I guess, could be working with Colby Sawyer or working with some of these other larger stakeholders, as workers of our committee. For the multi-trails use stuff could be, improving conversations and opening conversations with them. That would be great too. So.
Yeah, right. I mean, obviously, if we collaborate with them around the multipurpose trail and we're doing the sidewalks in front of their campus, we want to have that kind of dialogue of making the campus more accessible, encouraging students to engage in active recreation. I mean, it's all part of the same conversation, I think. Yeah. Any other comments regarding sort of the work moving forward?
So Russ, it seems like we do have a little bit of direction. I think it's a great idea to steer away from New Hampshire DOT and their constraints. Look at Pleasant Lake. If our next meeting is going to be April, I would say it's our own individual responsibility to go down and look at Pleasant Lake and come up with individual ideas. I think you've provided us with tremendous resources in what other towns have done throughout the state, the options for active transportation to promote good health, activity, safety. So with that, with those as references, between now and our next meeting, I think we should each come up with some sort of an idea, Grant, to support what you've been suggesting on how we might configure safe zones around that heavily populated area, so that in April we can come up with very specific recommendations to get in place by May.
Yeah, I think that maybe a suggestion is that we do a site visit. I mean, obviously, there's like 6 feet of snow beside the road right now, but maybe a site visit where we can talk about what might be effective approaches, traffic calming approaches on Pleasant Lake, and see if Adam and or Sam would be willing to do that with us. So I'll follow up on that, and I'll keep the committee informed. Is there any other discussion or comment this evening in terms of our meeting? Bob?
Bob Bowers, resident of New London. This is sort of irrelevant, but I really loved hearing about the connection with the college. The more we can engage those kids, the more we can get them to come downtown, the more we can get them to be part of our community, I think the better off we all are. And I go back a couple of years ago and I talked to a young student about how we could get people downtown more, and of all things, she came up with food trucks. And that's pretty cool. If you ever been to Portland, is it Portland? Portland, along the waterway, they got food trucks and it's just like a party out there. I don't think you can do it here. But the more we can engage on something like this, the more you'll get them involved in and interested in being engaged in other ways. So it's not just a bicycle committee anymore, it's a broader community interest you've got going here. And I appreciate that. I think that's wonderful. I just thought I'd say that. Thanks.
Okay.
Bob, 2 summers ago, we did have a food truck event
Yes,
here on
we did,
Green.
yes.
Rotary organized that, and it was hugely
Yes,
successful and shows how you can create a vibrant environment downtown.
yes.
You just need to bring people in, so.
The food truck problem is a four-wheeled issue of the bike route problem. You've got a state road that's not wide enough, and how do you park food trucks? So, yeah, if you could put them on the green, but I don't think a lot of people want food trucks every weekend on the green, but who knows? Yeah.
All right, well, thank you. If there's no further discussion or comment this evening from the committee or the attendees, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Seconded, and all those in favor? All right, thank you very much, everyone.